Here's the project we're going to do today. I call this Indian Lake, and this is made with mostly Makin A Scene rubber stamps. And these are the stamps that were used. We used the Leafy Tree T8186D, Weeping Willow T8178F, Sailboat Trio T10233A, the small and the tall grass, which is M1026B, Rocky Shore T2035F, Teepee with Brave T3080D, Small Wigwam T110A, and we also used a stamp from Stampscapes from the Nature Sheet 8, the Water Ripples, and two small stamps from Art Impressions. The bundle of flowers was from the set 5009, and the small grass was from the set 4051. And let's begin. Okay, I have a quarter sheet of Chrome Coat glossy cardstock in my Stampin' Up! Stamp positioner, where I have placed all my major stamps. I'm using a MISTI Creative Corner so that I can offset the paper. And we'll start by stamping the background and the two teepees with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. Okay, I'm going to add some color for the sky and the water portion. I'm going to use some distressed ink. I'm going to start with Tumbled Glass, then we'll go with Salty Ocean, and finally Mermaid Lagoon. I'm going to use a makeup brush for applying the ink. This is something you can get an entire set on Amazon for around $15–16. And you just brush it on the ink and then brush it onto your paper. Okay, I noticed that my Memento Tuxedo Black ink is smearing a little bit, so I'm going to give this a little bit of a chance to dry before I continue. Okay, it's dried a little bit longer, and we'll apply some more ink. And I clean off the brush in between colors just by wiping it on a dry microfiber cloth and then making sure that it's clean. And then we'll go on to the next color, which is the Salty Ocean. Okay, I want to create a horizon line right here, so I'm just going to put a post-it note there and put a little more of this color on there just to give it a better horizon line to work with. Okay, and then we'll do the final one of Mermaid Lagoon. I'll put my mask back on. And for this color, I'm going to concentrate mostly on the corners and the edges. And when I remove the mask here, you'll notice that I'm also leaving it lighter at the horizon line. And so I will concentrate the darker color lower down. Okay, I'm going to go back with my Tumbled Glass, which is the lightest blue, to just kind of even out everything. Okay, for the grassy areas, I'm going to use Distress Ink Shabby Shutters and Mowed Lawn. We'll start with the Shabby Shutters. Okay, I'm going to change to this long skinny brush. Okay, now we'll do the Mowed Lawn. Okay, I'm coming back to the Shabby Shutters. And I'm also going to put some of the Shabby Shutters here as a reflection of the trees, but I'm going to stamp it off first before I add it into the water. Okay, I'm going to give this a little bit of a chance to dry and maybe even use my heat gun. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my Distressed Ink Tumbled Glass, and then I'm just going to smooth out the water one more time. Okay, and my heat tool again. Okay, I'm going to use my water ripple stamp and some Memento Tuxedo Black, and I will ink up the stamp, and then I'm going to wipe around the outside to give it kind of a random ripple. For the teepees, I'm going to use some Copic markers. I'm going to use E95 and E97. Okay, for the decorative features on this teepee, I'm going to use Copic markers Y26 and YR27. Okay, and for the shadows in the teepee, I'm going to use some C5. Okay, and for the man's skin, I'm going to use EO1 and EO4. Okay, and for his clothes, I'm going to use some B21 and B24. Okay, and to add some additional color to the back here, I'm going to use some E55 for the rocks in the ground and G28 for the trees. Okay, I put it back in my positioner, and I'm going to re-stamp the teepee down here and this area back here. Unfortunately, the small teepee fell off, so I can't re-stamp it. But I'm just going to use some Memento Tuxedo Black. Okay, now I'm going to add the trees. So I've got those on the other side of my stamp positioner. And put this back in again. And I'm going to ink them up, and also the boat, with Memento Tuxedo Black. Okay, I'm going to dry this. Okay, I'm going to use some Distress Oxide peeled paint, and I'm just going to ink up the leaves of the trees. And I'm using Distress Oxide because it has some properties of pigment ink, and so it will stay on top a lot better than if I were to just use Distress inks or some other water-based ink. Okay, and I'm going to give this Distress Oxide ink a good chance to dry, and then I'm going to go back and restamp these trees with the Memento Tuxedo Black ink. Okay, I'll put it back in and get my Memento Tuxedo Black. Okay, now I'm going to be really careful with this because that Distress Oxide ink is not drying very well on this chrome coat paper. And so when I'm finishing off this project, I want to make sure that I don't smear any of the Distress Oxide ink that I put on. Okay, I'm going to add some texture down here to the bottom, and so I'm going to use some different grass stamps that I've got. Using this one from Making a Scene, and then the smaller grass set from Art Impressions. And once again, I'm going to use Distress Oxide in the peeled paint. And I will use the Art Impressions stamp . And I'm going to use the small bundle flowers from Art Impressions, and I'm going to use a couple of Distress Oxide inks. I'm going to use some Wilted Violet and some Seedless Preserves just to get a couple of different colors for wildflowers. And I am only going to ink up the flower portion of this, not the stems. And I'll just ink the very tippy top of it to put some color over here. Now I'll do the same thing with the Wilted Violet. Okay, now I'll use the big grass from the Making a Scene, and I'm going to start by using some Memento Tuxedo Black. And now I'll do the same thing with some Distress Oxide peeled paint. Okay, now I'm going to give this a little bit of a chance to dry really well. Then I'm going to put on some white gel pen highlights. Okay, and while I'm waiting for this to dry, I'm going to add some more C5 Copic marker just to add some shadows in certain areas. Okay, now I'm going to use my little Art Impressions grass stamp again with some Distressed ink, Mowed Lawn. I got some of the Distress Oxide on my Distress ink pad because I wasn't careful enough of wiping off the stamp before I re-inked, and so I'm just going to wipe off with my stamp chamois. And I'm also going to try some Memento Tuxedo Black with my small stamp and just stamp some random grass. Okay, so basically what I did is I used that small stamp to just kind of stamp along the lines that I drew with my Copic marker so that they weren't quite so stark. Okay, now I'm going to use my white gel pen to add some highlights, and I'm going to be careful that I don't smear any of that Distress Oxide ink that I've got, but I will add. Okay, and for some reason the white gel pen isn't wide enough for me, so I'm going to try using some Hero Arts Unicorn White pigment ink, and I'll apply it with a fantastic applicator that I've trimmed down so that it's a wedge tip so that I have better control. And I think I'll also use the pigment ink to add some clouds into the sky. Okay, and I'm still wanting to add more white. Okay, I have it back in my stamp positioner, and I'm going to restamp the trees again with Memento Tuxedo Black. Okay, and now I want to get the ripples back into here. So I'm going to just turn this around and only ink up the water. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a black Memento marker. Now I inadvertently stamped over this tree, and I didn't mean to do that. So I will turn this around and I will restamp the tree, and I'll use my marker again. And I like the marker, the results from the marker more than the ink. So I'm going to also restamp this tree. Okay, now I'm going to add another layer for the clouds. Okay, I think I'm going to stop at this point. And so what I have left is I'm going to sign and date it. I'm going to use a Copic Multiliner 0.3. Okay, I'm going to give the pigment ink a little bit longer of a chance to dry, and then I will spray it with an acrylic protective coating, and we'll be back. Okay, and here is the final result after I sprayed it with the acrylic coating, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye!